A baby horse is born knowing how to run. It slides into the world, blinks at the wet grass, and within an hour, it is standing on 4 shaking legs. By sundown, it can keep up with the herd. A wildebeest calf does it in minutes. A baby dolphin can swim before it takes its first real breath of air. You needed 12 months just to walk. Sit with that number for a second. A foal goes from nothing to running in under an hour. You went from being born to taking 3 wobbling steps across a room, and it took you a full year, sometimes longer. By every measure an animal in the wild would use, you arrived broken, useless, unfinished. And that may be the most important thing that ever happened to you. You could not lift your own head, not for months. You could not roll over, could not hold a single object on purpose, could not tell the difference between your own foot and a stranger's hand. If someone had not been there every hour to carry you and warm you and feed you and clean you, you would have been gone before you ever formed a memory of being alive. There is actually a name for the 2 kinds of newborn. Animals born ready, like the foal and the wildebeest, eyes open and legs working, the software already loaded, are called precocial. The opposite kind, born blind and naked and helpless, the kind that has to be hidden in a nest, are called altricial. Picture a newborn mouse or a baby bird, pink and sealed-eyed in the dark. That is the company you were born into, a nest animal. And here's the strange part. Helpless newborns almost always belong to small, fast-breeding creatures that pump out litters and lose most of them. They do not belong to a large, slow ape that would one day build cities and ask why. Almost nothing your size is born this incapable. So why are you? The first person to take that question seriously was a Swiss zoologist named Adolf Portmann. He spent his life comparing newborns across the animal kingdom, and human babies kept breaking his charts. A newborn ape can cling to its mother's fur from the moment it's born. A newborn human cannot cling to anything. Portmann did the math on what it would take to fix that. To be born at the same stage of development as a baby chimpanzee, he calculated, you would have needed to stay inside your mother for around 21 months, almost 2 years. You were not carried to term. You were evicted. Portmann had a gentle name for what happens next. He called your first year outside the womb an extrauterine spring, a pregnancy that simply continues in the open air. The growing wasn't finished. It just moved out into the light, into the cold, into the noise. You were, in the plainest sense, born a year too soon. The obvious question is the one a parent asks at 3 in the morning. Why? Why would evolution build a creature so dangerously helpless that it cannot survive its own first day alone? In 1960, an anthropologist named Sherwood Washburn gave the answer that ruled science for the next 50 years. He called it the obstetrical dilemma, and it begins with the single strangest thing your species ever did. You stood up. When your ancestors started walking on 2 legs, the shape of the hips had to change. The pelvis narrowed and tilted to balance an upright body over 2 feet. And right at the moment that doorway was getting smaller, something else was getting bigger. The brain. You can feel the collision coming, a widening head trying to pass through a narrowing gate. Washburn's answer was a brutal compromise. The baby comes out early, while the skull is still small and soft, while the bones of the head haven't fused, while there is still a gap you can feel on a newborn's crown that lets the skull fold to fit. You were pushed into the world half-built, because if you had waited until you were ready, neither you nor your mother would have made it through the door. There is a quiet violence in that compromise, and you can still see it today. A newborn skull is not one solid dome. It is separate plates, left deliberately loose, so that during birth they can slide and overlap and fold the head down small enough to pass through a space that should be too narrow for it. The gap you can feel on the top of an infant's head, the soft spot that makes every new parent nervous, is the last of those open seams. It does not fully close for well over a year. You were, in the most literal way, shipped before the box was finished being sealed. Here is how unfinished you really were. At birth, your brain was only about 1/4 of its adult size. A newborn chimpanzee starts at nearly half. That missing 3/4 of you did not grow in the dark, sealed and safe. It grew out here, in arms, in the sound of a voice, in the light of a face leaning over you. And that single fact flips the whole story. A foal's brain is almost finished the moment it lands. It is born to be a horse, and it will be a very good horse, and it will never be much more than a horse. Its instincts come pre-installed because there is no time to learn them. But you came out as a question with the answer left blank. Your brain did the bulk of its wiring while the world was already pouring in. Every face you stared at, every word spoken over your crib, every song, every routine, every touch reached you while the circuits were still being laid down. You were not shaped by instinct in the safety of the womb. You were shaped by a world, by a place, by people, after you arrived. The horse is born complete and closed. You were born open. There may be an even deeper gift hidden in your helplessness. The anthropologist Dean Falk noticed a problem your ancestors faced that no ape has. A baby chimp clings the fur with strong, grasping hands and feet and rides along while the mother's hands stay free. But your ancestors lost the fur and lost the grasping foot, and a human baby cannot hold on. So a mother walking, gathering, working had to do something no ape ever needed to do. She had to put the baby down, and a baby put down a few feet away, frightened and out of arms, does the only thing it can. It cries out. It calls. Falk argues that this endless back and forth, the sounds a mother makes to soothe the baby she cannot hold, is one of the oldest roots of human speech. The reason you can talk may begin with the fact that you could not hold on. But the story has a twist, because science rarely lets a clean idea stand for long. For 50 years, the obstetrical dilemma was treated as settled fact. Then, an anthropologist named Holly Dunsworth started measuring the things everyone had assumed. If wide hips really made walking inefficiently, women with wider hips should move less efficiently. They don't. The supposed trade-off between a body built to walk and a body built to give birth turned out to be much weaker than anyone had claimed. So Dunsworth offered a different answer, and it is stranger than the first. You were not born when you ran out of room. You were born when your mother ran out of energy. Pregnancy is one of the most metabolically demanding things a human body can do. Dunsworth's hypothesis is that there is a ceiling, a point where a mother simply cannot take in and burn enough fuel to keep growing a baby any larger inside her. Birth is the moment that furnace can no longer be fed. The baby doesn't leave because the door is too small. The baby leaves because staying would cost more than a body can give. Notice that both answers, the old one and the new one, arrive at the same quiet truth. You came early because finishing the job inside was simply too expensive to survive. So what did all that helplessness actually buy? It bought you the longest childhood of any animal on Earth. Years of being unable to fend for yourself is the same thing as years of being taught, watched, corrected, loved. A foal's independence is also its limit. It will never need anyone enough to be changed by them. Your dependence was the opposite. It forced a bond so long and so total that it rewired how your whole species lives. Because a baby this fragile cannot be raised by one exhausted person alone. The anthropologists Karen Rosenberg and Wenda Trevathan showed that human birth itself, unlike almost any other animals, usually calls for help. The baby turns as it descends and is born facing away from the mother, hard for her to guide out on her own. From our earliest days, someone else was likely there, a hand, a second person. And the helplessness didn't stop at birth. It pulled in grandmothers, fathers, siblings, the whole tribe, all bent toward the survival of one creature who could do nothing for itself. The fragile baby didn't just need the group. The fragile baby built the group around it. This is the part the foal will never know. Its strength is also its solitude. Your weakness is the reason you were never, not for 1 hour of that first year, truly alone. The thing that should have killed your species is the thing that made it human. Being born unfinished meant being finished by other people. Your brain, your language, your bonds, the simple fact that you turned toward a familiar face, all of it grew out of a year you cannot remember, in arms you will never be able to picture, doing the one thing a horse never has to do, which is to be kept alive entirely by love. And somewhere in that lost year, a choice was made about you, over and over, to pick you up or to set you down. You will never remember which, but your body learned the answer before you had any words for it, and a part of you has been quietly carrying that answer ever since. So here's the question worth leaving the lights on for tonight. Was being born this helpless the most fragile thing that ever happened to our species, or the strongest move it ever made? Sit with your own answer. The next time you see a newborn that cannot hold up its own head, look again before you call it weak. That trembling, useless, unfinished little thing is not a failed horse. It is a different bet entirely. It is a brain that chose to be built by the world instead of sealed away from it, a creature that traded the safety of instinct for the chance to become absolutely anything. A baby horse is born knowing how to run. You were born knowing nothing at all, and that, in the end, is the only reason you could become someone.